Welcome to Building Futures, the podcast where we explore how design, architecture, and real life decisions shape the homes and the lives of tomorrow. Today, Khaled and I are talking about one of the most important and one of the most misunderstood aspects of building a home: budget. More specifically, the difference between hard costs and soft costs. How are you, Khaled?
Hey, yes, we have an interesting topic today.
Yes, and it's one of those things people think they understand until they're already in the middle of the process.
That's usually how it goes. Most clients come in with a number in mind, and that number is almost always based on construction alone. Materials, labor, finishes the visible parts of the project.
So when someone says, "This is my budget," what are they usually referring to?
They're almost always talking about construction cost, concrete framing, roofing, windows, finishes, the things they imagine seeing on site once the project starts. And while those costs are very real and very important, they don't represent the full financial scope of a project.
And that's where the distinction between hard costs and soft costs becomes essential.
Exactly. Hard costs are the direct costs of construction, everything that physically becomes part of the building. That includes the structural system, concrete, framing, roofing, insulation, windows, and all mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. Interior and exterior finishes are part of that as well, along with the labor required to assemble and install everything on site. So for most people, hard costs are the budget. They tend to dominate the conversation because they're visible, measurable, and usually the largest portion of the total cost. But focusing only on hard costs creates a blind spot.
Which brings us to soft costs.
Yes, and these costs are less intuitive because you don't see them in the finished home. Soft costs include everything required to make construction possible from a legal, technical, and administrative perspective. They support the project before construction begins and form the framework that allows a building to move forward.
What does that usually include?
Architectural and design fees, structural and mechanical engineering services, surveys, site measurements, and any technical studies required based on the conditions of the land. On top of that, you have planning and building permit fees, municipal charges, development charges, utility connection costs, and legal or administrative services. None of these are physically visible once the house is built, but without them, construction simply can't proceed.
And that's often where people underestimate the true cost of a project.
Very often, soft costs are frequently treated as secondary during early budgeting, when in reality they can represent a significant portion of the total budget. The exact percentage depends on the scope of the project, the characteristics of the site, and the municipality involved. But they're never negligible. Another thing that surprises a lot of people is when these costs actually happen. That timing is critical. Unlike hard costs, which occur during construction, soft costs are front-loaded. They appear early during design development, planning approvals, technical coordination, and permitting, long before there's any visible progress on site. And that can feel uncomfortable.
Because it feels like money is being spent, but nothing is being built yet.
Exactly. There's no foundation, no walls, nothing you can point to. But that phase is where the project becomes viable, compliant, and buildable. It's where an idea turns into something that can legally and safely exist.
Oh, Khaled, now that you mention this, you actually talk about a really strong example of this in the free book guide. It's something people can find on your website, calgreens.com, and it really illustrates how soft costs can completely change the understanding of a project, right?
Yes, that example stands out because the client was actually a general contractor himself. He purchased a mixed-use building in Toronto with the intention of adding an additional floor and creating new residential units. From a construction perspective, he was very confident and familiar with building costs. What hadn't been fully anticipated were the soft costs associated with the project.
And development charges played a big role there.
They did. During the early planning stages, development charges were identified. For each new two-bedroom residential unit, the development charge alone was approximately $60,000. In total, that represented close to $250,000 in municipal charges, excluding permits, professional fees, and approval-related costs. This wasn't a mistake in construction budgeting. It was a lack of full financial visibility at the beginning of the project. And identifying that early allowed the project to be reassessed before it went too far. That's the key point. Soft costs aren't a final expense added at the end. They shape the project from the very beginning. They're also closely linked to time. Every study, submission, review, and approval requires coordination, and delays or additional requirements can increase overall project cost.
So, budgeting shouldn't be approached as just a construction estimate.
Exactly. It needs to be understood as a comprehensive process, one that accounts for regulation, approvals, professional services, and time. When that distinction is clear from the start, budgets become more accurate, decisions are better informed, and expectations stay aligned.
And the overall experience changes?
Completely. Understanding hard costs and soft costs isn't about spending more money. It's about understanding what's required and why. When people understand that early on, the budget stops being a source of uncertainty and becomes a planning tool instead.
What's the biggest budgeting mistake they should avoid?
Thinking that the budget is just a construction number. A home isn't paid for only with materials and labor. It's paid for with design, coordination, approvals, and the regulatory framework that allows construction to happen. When that understanding is in place from the beginning, the process becomes clearer, more controlled, and far more manageable.
Thank you, Khaled, for this important information. This was Building Futures. Remember, you can find us on calgreens.com and Instagram.
See you on the next episode.